There's a report of a white Bigfoot in the Willoughby area.
I screamed, and then this thing roared. A friend of mine, he came running up. He saw it too.
6 people, 6 encounters, and 6 creatures that defy everything we know about the woods. From glowing red eyes in the treetops to a face-to-face standoff with something nearly 8 feet tall. These are the moments that turned ordinary days into nightmares and left everyone asking the same chilling question: what's actually living out there? The YouTube channel Cabin in the Woods is known for exploring the unexplained and mysterious in the heart of dense forests. But for this adventure, the creator decided to bring his daughter along. While vacationing on Vancouver Island, Canada, they encountered what the creator had initially believed to be a single Bigfoot. On this foggy, isolated day, the forest seemed quiet, almost too quiet, as if hiding something just out of sight.
So if you didn't think I was completely nuts after my last Bigfoot encounter video, then you definitely will at the end of this one, because I'm about to explain in detail why what I initially considered to be an encounter with one of these creatures while vacationing with my family on Vancouver Island, Canada, I now consider to be an encounter with at least 2 of them.
From his daughter's perspective, the encounters were even more unsettling, and by the end of the day, he became convinced that what they had seen wasn't one creature, but at least 2. What followed would challenge everything he thought he knew about these elusive beings. On that day at Moo Creek Beach, the family began climbing a massive fallen tree log. One by one, they made their way up, each eager to reach the top. At first, the creator's daughter watched her father, then followed, with her mother close behind.
Yeah,
Well,
on Vancouver Island, and what happened when we were playing on that log, okay?
Well, what happened was Dad started climbing up on that big, like, tree log thing, and then of course I wanted to go too, so I began climbing, and then Mama followed, and then we all were up there, and then Mama got off or something, or she was sitting on another part.
Once they were all up there, her mother stepped away to sit nearby, leaving the children to explore the log and the nearby roof-like structure on their own. It was in those moments, while they played apart from their parents, that something strange began to stir. Events that would later take on a chilling significance. As they recounted the day, the daughter remembered the moment her father spotted something unusual. She explained how she had seen a rock flying through the air, what she later realized might have been a Sasquatch throwing it.
Found one fallen tree first, and then I saw something. I saw a large hulking black shape that appeared to have moved, and then I went back a final time the day after that, and I found another fallen tree that seemed to have been snapped off at the trunk, and the big black shape, which I now know to be a creature, was gone. That's the very condensed version of what happened. The full details, once again, are covered in that other video. As I said at the beginning of this video, my initial impression was that the hulking black mass that I saw...
At the time, she hadn't understood what it was, only that there were no humans around who could have done it. The rock struck the log with a loud crack, and had she not been safely positioned behind it, it could have hit her in the head. The memory of that echoing impact stayed with them both, a chilling reminder of just how close they had come to danger.
Because this thing moved. It kind of looked like a root ball, but it moved, and root balls don't move, and it disappeared the day after I initially saw it, which root balls also don't do. I posted my video about this entire encounter about a week ago at the time of this filming, and it got a lot of attention, which is not something I was expecting. A lot of people asked me, why didn't you get more footage of this or that? The reason is that I wasn't planning on making a YouTube video.
From the very beginning, he believed the massive dark figure he saw could only have been a single Bigfoot. Nothing else made sense. It couldn't have been a bear. Black bears were the only species in the area, and none of them reached the size of what he witnessed. This thing stood an estimated 8 to 9 feet tall, with a body at least 4 feet wide, towering over the surrounding brush. What unsettled him most was how it moved. At first glance, it resembled a huge root ball wedged in the foliage.
From that footage, and she explained to me in her note that she believed that there were two of them there, because in her opinion there were two distinct faces visible peeking through the thick bushes and foliage that I was trying to peer through at the time that I got the footage. I was a little bit skeptical at first, to be honest. She wasn't the first person to react this way. I had gotten a number of comments on that video with people explaining that they thought it was more than one creature. And I kind of thought, well, yeah, you're just seeing things. I was there. I think it was just one big one.
Until it shifted. Root balls don't move, yet this one did. And by the following day, the entire mass had vanished without a trace, something a root ball certainly doesn't do. After his encounter, a girl named Katie didn't just glance over the footage, she dissected it. Frame by frame, she sharpened and enhanced the images, trying to make sense of what had been captured in the thicket. And in her message, she revealed something unsettling. In her view, there weren't just shadows in those bushes.
A very nice lady named Katie, who lives in Australia, emailed me a few days after I posted my encounter video. She had taken the time and trouble to grab some screenshots from certain portions of that video where I was actually filming the creature. And she had done her best to sharpen and enhance those, which wasn't easy because, well, I was quite far away. I was 50 to 60 yards away when I filmed the creature. And I zoomed in a lot, and then in the first video I posted, I zoomed in digitally even more to get as close a view as possible.
There were two faces staring back. While the camera struggled to push through the tangle of leaves, something, or two somethings, were already watching from the other side. Hidden in the undergrowth, silent, deliberate, almost daring to be seen. But this discovery is only the beginning. There are layers still buried in the dark, and questions that grow louder the longer they're ignored.
But I looked at these screenshots that this lady, Katie, had sent, and the more I looked at these screenshots that she had filtered and sharpened a little bit in Photoshop, the more I thought, yeah, it kind of does look like there's two faces there. In fact, it really looks like there's two faces there. And you can see what I mean here as I go through the footage and I show you these screenshots, because on the left-hand side, we have what appears to be a large hulking creature. You can see what, in my opinion, is the creature's right shoulder on the left of the dark shape, with an arm hanging down.
The more he studied Kathy's sharpened screenshots, the harder it was to deny what they showed. Two separate faces in the brush. He couldn't claim absolute certainty, but the second face sat too far to the right, too distant to belong to the same figure. If it were one creature, it would have to be impossibly wide, and nothing about that felt right.
I didn't notice it at the time when I was actually getting the footage because, as I said in my first video, I was probably 50 to 60 yards away and utilizing a lot of zoom on my phone camera to get the footage I got. So this level of detail wasn't apparent to me until I started examining the footage, and in the case of this second potential face, until this nice lady Katie emailed me. And again, the more I looked at her screenshots, the more I couldn't deny that it looked an awful lot like two faces.
On Small Town Monsters, it all starts with Stacy Hostetler, who never expected his quiet walk in the woods to turn into the moment that changed everything. It forced him into the mystery he's been chasing ever since. He had never been interested in Bigfoot, not even slightly. The thought barely ever crossed his mind. But that changed on March 17th, 2009. That morning, he set out for a simple day hike in a local Ohio park, something he did all the time.
One of the things I tell everybody, if they go out into the forest and they shoot video footage, like especially back then it was VHS tapes. Now it's an SD card. A lot easier to store these than what you did VHS. But I had shelf upon shelf upon shelf of VHS tapes. It was August 2nd of '92. I was out there by myself. I was shooting what they call B-roll footage. I wanted to show, this was before I actually brought anybody in from the Pacific Northwest to show them that we had the woods, the food, water, shelter for a big animal like this to exist.
The air was a crisp 41 degrees, the sky unusually bright and blue for an Ohio morning. Nothing fell out of the ordinary. But as he followed that random trail deeper into the woods, something was waiting, something that would rewrite everything he thought he knew about the wilderness forever. The moment he stepped off the trail, everything changed. He took just 2 steps into the woodline, 2, and something deep in the ravine erupted with a roar of crashing leaves and snapping branches.
Shooting footage of what we now call Sasquatch Lake. I didn't like the position I was at. Turn around, take 4 or 5 steps. I believe it's 4 steps. You can tell by the bounces in the video camera. The camera, I left it running. So it's on my right shoulder. It's facing in that direction. I'm facing in this direction. No knowledge of what's walking down the road up there 100 yards away. I stopped momentarily, turned back around, shoot more footage of the lake, and put the tape on the shelf.
Whatever it wasn't small, and it definitely wasn't normal. He'd walked that trail 100 times without incident, but the moment he eased off the path and into the woodline, the forest responded. So loud, so powerful, it stopped him cold.
Through the process of elimination, we've kind of discovered how tall it is. It was light in color. I wouldn't say it was white, but it looks close to white. It was very quick. It wasn't around for long, a couple of seconds on video, and never seen it again. I wouldn't consider it a sighting because I did not see it with my eyes, but it was there. When Monster Quest came to Ohio and did an episode on the Ohio grassman, they had a fella in Minnesota take a look at it.
Out of nowhere, 3 loud whistles hit him from behind. Not birds. This sounded human. And 10 seconds later, another set of identical whistles rose from the ravine. 2 perfect sets. 2 different places. Something out there was communicating the same 3 whistles climbed out of the ravine below, matching perfectly, note for note.
I got to this one point in the trail, and instead of going all the way down to the edge of the ridge, where this trail zigzagged and went down in a ravine, I decided to go off the trail and step into the wood line. The leaves were real crunchy. I took 2 steps off into the wood line, and as soon as I hit my second step, going into the wood line, something way down in the ravine just took off from left to right. I have never heard anything in the woods make that kind of sound that loud.
It wasn't an animal call, it was a message. Whatever made those sounds, I wasn't alone, and it wasn't hiding anymore. The sound hit him so hard it stunned him. His vision washed out white for a split second, and when his eyes snapped back into focus, he realized he wasn't alone. Between 2 trees, something massive froze mid-stride, staring straight at him. He didn't believe in Bigfoot, didn't give the idea any credit at all. But in that moment, with this thing locked on him, there was only one word his mind could form.
Various pop culture iterations of the creature, later known as the Yeti, sealed the deal, especially after Bigfoot burst on the scene and it became a handy visual reference. Bigfoot has black or brown hair, while the abominable snowman has white. Oddly enough, not only does that stance ignore the documented reports, it would seem that those same reports reveal the opposite to be true. The Himalayan Yeti is typically described as having dark or reddish-brown fur.
Bigfoot. For nearly 15 seconds, they held each other's gaze, silent, unmoving, and way too close. He'd never been this scared in the woods. Never. There, frozen between 2 trees, stood something enormous. 3.5 to 4 feet at the shoulders, easily 8 feet tall, and completely white from head to toe. It didn't move, it didn't breathe loudly, just watched it.
In the same vicinity that had also spotted a white creature, and the lady did report that the hair was down in front of its eyes, which makes us think it was the same creature.
Well, I think it could be old. There's a report of a white Bigfoot in the Willoughby area, Willoughby Hills, near the Chagrin River. It's been seen several times. I suppose you could get an albino version of one, but I don't see any problem with a white Bigfoot. I mean, if it's regular hair and they're similar to us in genetics.
Time slowed, the forest around him fading into a heavy, silent stillness. His mind raced for one thought, one desperate escape. Get back to the truck, before it decides he's prey. The worst part? It was standing directly between him and his truck. To escape, he had to climb the trail, up out of the ravine, never taking his eyes off that towering white figure. Every step uphill felt like a gamble.
And especially seen at night. And like under a moonlit sky, you might see a dirty blonde Bigfoot walking around and think, oh, it's a white-colored Bigfoot. Maybe, maybe not. But that's one potential, that's something that I think parallels this conversation, is that, you know, if you've got the black-haired and the brown and the cinnamon, why not a dirty blonde leading up to even a silver or a white-haired colored Bigfoot?
Like turning his back might be the last mistake he ever made. He kept glancing over his left shoulder, locked on it the entire time. And the moment he reached level ground, it moved. It bolted with explosive speed, 2 massive steps, then gone. Vanished into the trees as if it had never been there at all. That was the last glimpse he ever got of the creature. The creature disappeared into the shadows, leaving only questions behind. Could something that big really exist? Right here, in our own backyards? Tonight, we're exploring a sighting that left even seasoned trackers questioning what's real. We've collected stories from locals who've seen something tall, silent, and unlike anything they've ever known. Sleepy Gulch sat right between 3 active Bigfoot zones, areas known for repeated and unexplained sightings. As they made their way deeper into the dense, shadowed woods, Jenny came across yet another fresh report from a local witness, one that sent a chill through the team.
Serviced it the last time that Sleepy Gulch runs between 3 Bigfoot sighting locations that are really close to it. And on the way in, Jenny read another report that happened on one side of Sleepy Gulch, plus the dozens of them that are right here. It is a muddy, slimy mess. There's a little bit of snow. Look at Jenny.
Yeah.
Jenny fell down in the mud. She's like, I hope that doesn't stain.
I know.
I think she's gonna be fine.
With every step, the sense that they were being watched, hunted even, grew stronger. The snow-covered trail was perfect for spotting tracks. As they moved deeper into the silent woods toward the trail camera, every crunch of their footsteps felt heavy with anticipation. Whatever the camera might reveal, ordinary wildlife, or something far stranger, was still a mystery waiting to unfold.
I see some moose tracks, and that.
Deer.
And some deer tracks. There's a moose track, and Jenny and I filmed a couple of moose on our way in here. I'll make sure I put those in this video.
That's a deer right now.
Yeah, another deer track. Yeah, maybe we'll find Bigfoot tracks because we're finding Bigfoot food.
Fresh tracks appeared in the snow, moose, deer, but something about them felt different. Jenny had filmed a few moose on the way in, yet these new prints seemed to whisper through the silent forest. With each step deeper into the woods, an unsettling feeling grew, as if unseen eyes were watching, waiting, and not all the movement belonged to ordinary wildlife.
How creepy is that? He estimates it was about 9 feet tall, and it was only 20 feet away from him when it stood up. He says it was a male. He could see its man part, he says. He was close enough. He could see its skin, its dark skin under its dark hair fur. And he says it got up and it never looked directly at him. Acted like he wasn't there and kind of took a step towards him.
He shared the story of a friend Casey's terrifying encounter while camping. His friend had gone into the willows to cut some branches for hot dog roasters, when, just 20 feet away, a massive Bigfoot rose up from the shadows, silently watching. He said it must have been about 9 feet tall, a huge male, and that he could even see its dark skin beneath the thick fur. Every detail was clear to him, and the memory of being so close to something so enormous still sends shivers down his spine. The creature rose slowly, never once meeting his eyes, moving as if he didn't exist.
We've overshot it a couple of times. She's calling this creek bed a ditch.
That's where I came from.
Oh my heck. There was so much cover here when I set it up.
I know, now there's nothing.
Now there's no cover.
Mm-hmm.
You spotted that from a long ways away.
One step forward, then a quiet shift to the side, and it vanished into the shadows. The forest fell silent, but the chilling sense of being watched lingered, as if something enormous had just brushed past his world and disappeared without a trace. Not far from that same eerie stretch of woods, Jenny heard a story that sent chills down her spine. A woman she knows, who does her nails, told her how her boyfriend had a face-to-face encounter with a Bigfoot in the willows while camping. So close, so real, it felt like the creature was watching his every move, leaving him shaken and questioning everything he thought he knew about the forest. If it appeared just 20 feet away from someone else, what would happen if it appeared near you? That start ordinary, explainable. Chris alone at Skamania County spring break. Bideful vines, broken branch impression in the ground. Terror struck, sight, and forcefully what happened remains a chilling story no one. Alone in the night, Chris ground, two unseen children slept.
First people in, and only people in the campground, and we found a vine maple that was limb twist broke, an 18 by 9 inch impression in the ground. We found other branches snapped off of fir trees 12 feet up. And that night, and we thought, oh, cool, you know, didn't think.
Across his chest, he could knock rang through the trees. When he finally emerged, he waited. That night, Chris knew he had to find Sheridan, a seasoned investor listening to those who've encountered. Some describe distant figures, harmless, as if the forest. Others shared darker from nowhere, invisible, or strange disturbances at. Each story unveils a sense of calm
was in the campground. There's multiple, there's at least two moving back and forth around the camp. I think they were just messing with us, but around 4 in the morning, wow, it was like a rock on a tree, knock. Everything went quiet. I got out of the tent and built up a fire and waited for my kid to get up. After that, that's when I decided to start doing stuff like that.
Suddenly, Chris bringing the unexplained, often never thought they'd have one to share. Time in these woods seems to have it. Even long-time experiences they kept secret, with a girl, when two from the trees, as they appeared. For just how thin the line in the inexplicable. Slick and her group settled into seating. Suddenly, it wasn't just a simple camping wind to explain the fall. Rebecca might be nearby. In the woods became unsettling. Lurking just beyond sight, recounted the terrifying experience.
It's a difficult question because it depends. You know, I've heard so many different encounters and I've talked to so many different people. There's some things that really stand out. That you've seen, you know, they've seen a figure in the distance, right? Or it seemed friendly, and they didn't seem like it was aggressive or there was any concern. They didn't have any fear, no feeling of dread or anything like that. But then there's some times where they're being pelted with rocks.
A presence more than a shake, filling the space around. It struck suddenly, a car, a jolt, a force that touched her hair. The smell alone suggested, even without a clear, it undeniable. She had something extraordinary. She believed the contact was an atrocity. That sparked a question haunting Jody. Watching, testing. For him, proving her right, it became a challenge to confront.
I'm usually, because when I first started, I had to really learn all the other animals too, so I listened while I looked, but most of the target subject vocalizations, they fall in a certain hertz range, and a lot of times they'll look similar to human vocalizations, and so I look at a narrow hertz range, and when I see something that doesn't match up with the known animals, then I stop and I look at it, because I look at it visually just like David does, and it's something over time. I've been doing it since 2015, it's 2021 now.
I've had multiple friends at work, you know, talk about different situations. It seems like, you know, anybody that spends any time in the woods around here has an experience, at least one that they talk about. People that you never would have thought, and you mentioned it. Now that I do the investigating and they know that I do that, some people come forward and be like, oh yeah, I have something that happened to me that I never told anybody about. I had a friend who was out parking with a girl and had 2 red eyes that he caught staring at him from in the trees that just disappeared. I had a
bed, we're all in our sleeping bags, and all of a sudden the chatter of us starting to die down to go to bed is broken by this tree fall. That changed the game because it went from just, okay, we're gonna just be out here camping, to, oh my goodness, there's no wind. It's possible that this could be natural.
Others that we think of as being very passive. But as to what's creating those situations, what's causing those reports to manifest in the way they do, I don't know that there's any conclusive answer to that, at least at this point. We do tend to see, at least in most places, that sightings spike during the times of the year that people are outdoors, which makes sense. But as far as what time of the year, what location, what climate, if that makes them more aggressive, less aggressive, you do hear quite a few stories coming out of Florida, the skunk ape, sometimes Louisiana, the Honey Island area.
Just given the behaviors and the things we're talking about, they seem to be pretty consistent and they're reported. Ape Canyon, if we are to believe the story of the miners, that was done as a sort of aggressive response to being shot at, or there was a curiosity factor with if the cabin was actually there. When the cabin was built, there seemed to be encounters with these creatures and the miners started shooting at them. And if we're to believe that story, maybe that tells us that they were curious, what are people doing in this really hard to reach place? And then it turned into aggressive behavior. So that was, I think, situational again.
The most mysterious wilderness city takes him deep into a lifelong member of the Chippewa fleeting encounters, something they could not explain. Chilling encounter with a creature foot. Deep listens as Rob recounts the moment while hunting with his father. He closed in from behind, alongside them. Then, they saw it, a broad chest, bone-shaking roar that the creature ran, then leaving both men for an encounter they would never forget. About its size. Explains his 6-foot-tall waist, making it at least with a massive barrel frame, every deed memory, and Bryce feels as if the forest itself within its shadow.
Hey, thanks for meeting me out here.
Oh, yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
This place is incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty thick out here. So, I understand you have an encounter story that you'd be willing to share with me.
Yeah, absolutely. One was when I was hunting with my dad. And as we were going down this deer trail, we started hearing heavy footsteps coming up behind us. And at the time, it sounded like it was coming down the same trail we were walking. It kind of caught up to us and then started paralleling us. So it kind of would push through these bushes into the opening where we were at.
Like a living shadow. Bryce and the team bringing in a trained forensic exactly as Rob saw it. Every detail.
And that's when we saw it. I mean, we could just see just big shoulders and chest. And all of a sudden, we heard this roar. I mean, it was a rib cage rattling roar. It felt like the tree shook and it went right through your body.
Proving the existence undoubted. The memory massive had moved through the forest that refused to fade. Michael Montoya, a month for turning fleeting memories. As Rob described, every shadow and shape, which seemed to breathe, immersed itself. By the now stared back from the pale and unsettling as the day was unmistakably human than ape. Its ledge, sloping while massive trapezius muscle is, every detail vivid and undeniable. The image of it again, tangible and shake. When the
Oh, right, Rob. When I usually work with witnesses, at this point I'm a little nervous because I'm about to show you what I've been working on. But I'm actually pretty confident this time around because you really remembered a lot of details. So, I'm really excited for you to see this. Are you ready to see this guy again?
Yeah, let's see it. Holy smokes. Yeah. Wow, that's incredible.
That looks like what you saw, Rob.
Yeah, yeah. That's incredible. It's crazy. It's like you pulled it right out of my brain. That's exactly how the eyebrows looked. They went up like that and then back down. Wow.
It was immediate, astonishing. Every detail down to the sweep of the eyebrows. Seeing it again, the awe, the full. For the first time, his mind now stood an undeniable sketch staring back at them. Vivid, every shadow remains. Could this ever come to proving that something still walks these forests?
I'm completely blown away by my conversation with Rob. The fact that he can recall so many details of his encounter is truly amazing.
It's like it's just burned in my brain.
Really?
I don't know if it's because of the adrenaline, but it's like a photo image in my brain.
Wow.
Yeah.
You said you might have had another encounter as well?
Yeah, so later on, in 1992, it was a year after I graduated.
So this is 10 years later?
Yeah, this was 10 years later. So I got together with some friends.
Something like a professional sketch artist draw what you saw?
Sure. I never thought about that.
Rob's memory of his Bigfoot encounter is so strong that it gives us this incredible opportunity to bring in a trained artist to create an image of Bigfoot that just for once is not blurry.
This is exactly what I was looking for.
But we can't rule anything out. We need to think outside the box. We need to try everything. Any tiny bit of information.
And his trap muscles on behind actually came up to where his ears were.
Interesting. Man, when you zero in on just what these things look like, it's incredible the amount of detail a witness remembers.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel seeing that?
It's just like, it just all comes rushing back. I mean, I feel like I'm shaking right now, just telling that story. That's amazing.
I was really blown away by Michael's sketch because it's one thing to hear about a witness's Bigfoot encounter, and it's another thing altogether to see the creature they were talking about.
Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
An ordinary moment was back. One quiet while arriving at his grandparents' rural, David stepped out of the behind the house, stretched, silent, and on the wall, something large. At first glance, it looked like Mog, but in the stillness of deliberate, watchful. As he moved closer, things strange and fleeting. It might be a giant bird with what looked like wings, all fours, pressing its the retaining wall.
Carport, but it was an older house, and it was really tight, so my grandfather would always make me get out of the car in the driveway. And I got out, and it was dark, and he had a retaining wall at one end of his driveway, and I saw something over there move around, and I thought it was just a big black dog. So I started walking over there towards it.
As if sight. When it finally, his first thought was that dog, but in the next sensation struck him. It was smiling, human, so real. Then the creature came him closer. A jet froze him in place. He screamed and his grandfather rushed out. Turned. He insisted that night became his first.
And as I got closer, I thought for a split second maybe it was some kind of giant bird, because it looked like it had wings with feathers hanging down. And it was down on all fours, crouched down, trying to stay in the shadows behind this retaining wall. And I got right up to the edge of it and looked down there, and
something wild, inspiringly real. Mind to forget but some things refuse. That summer, he found one of the camp's legendary. Their journey led them to a place called Chick Bend of Kyle Mountain. The area had its own strange histories and unexplained events out camp couldn't ignore. Wilderness there had a way of keeping until now.
And first I thought it was wrinkling its lips, because we had a dog and it was always growling and wrinkling its lips at me. But then I realized, and this is all happening very fast, that it was smiling at me. And with these, my dad played the piano, and the best way I can describe it is that the teeth look like the yellow keys on the piano.
The tent and the cup, his voice tight, we'd seen it again. A tree loomed nearby. They climbed it, scrambled. From above, something moving far brush, vanishing as they tore down the trail in pursuit. He was in the lead, then slammed into, felt it before he even saw it. Immense, brush, trying to escape its grip and hear a guttural roar. Just then, his friend appeared, froze at the sight. And in a split second, the cliff, tumbling, creature's presence still.
Just like this. And I had been kind of frozen looking at this thing, but when it did that, I screamed and started running. And my grandfather had already gone in the house, and I told him that there was a big hairy man over there. And he looked concerned, grabbed his 12 gauge, ran out there, and I heard a shot go off, and he came back in and said he didn't see anything.
That night would mark the predator unlike end. It didn't take a new kind of visitor, was old and unafraid. Trash bins were overturning them. The same pattern was emerging. Even predators were. Not long ago, deer in the vacant Pruce and town was vanishing. Creatures like this are slipping from watching, hunting, race. How much of this is really still wild?
One guy said it was a wolf, some guy said it was a bear, another guy said, no, it looks like a big monkey. And that was it. And then the next morning we were all packing up, and this was probably 9 o'clock in the morning. So I kind of did a crab walk backwards because I was on my back and got up and I screamed. And then this thing roared. And just about that time, this friend of mine, he came running up. He saw it too. And we were so terrified that we jumped off of that cliff. So that kind of started my journey on this thing. You know, I started going down to the library and reading about this, and then I had seen, I can't remember the magazine, but I was down at the library. They had a magazine that had the 67 Patterson Gimlin, you know, and they were talking about it then and talking about the footprint. So I was like, okay.
And is it all Freeman spent long convinced the land itself. Each trip revealed imprints, unusual of deliberate movement, discovery, building unanswered questions, and elusive. Then silence. Watch from just beyond view. Searcher Rosemary Ellen. Paul Freeman's legacy comes examined, not debate. Footprint casts he recovered, consistent with some apart from ordinary tracks. Deeper, Freeman documented footprints leading him from certain. He had seen strange nothing like this night. Freeman pushed deeper for it. These woods held, and now they seemed whatever moved beyond the brush, turning a routine investigation.
My name is Michael Freeman. Paul Freeman is my dad in 1982. That's when he had his first encounter with Bigfoot. And that kind of set off a 15-year obsession, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, go around this bush here, see what's going on here.
Haunt him long after he moved with fluid, instinct stiff. Nothing for. Proportions were disturbingly fake. Later, they spoke not of what he saw. A man known for strength and untouchable to his son was, for the family, that react footage. Whatever Paul's ability, and that was shadows, something moved, bright, impossibly still, thick and wild. Unlike the camera rises slowly, aware of its observer.
Now, Deduck Spring, where this video was taken, was one of the viable water sources that was still being used by animals.
Sometimes they come here and get water.
My dad, knowing this, had been going up to that area for a couple weeks, actually, and he was finding footprint tracks up there, hair samples. He had been taking his camera. He was filming the collection of evidence.
Wow, looks like he's pretty fresh.
He would find stuff, but he would never have any sightings. And he would go back, you know, the next day or the day after, and the same thing would happen over and over.
Yeah, he went back up the road, come down the road.
Attention. Every substance, patience, and alive, choosing to reveal itself fully. Unmistakable hallmarks, towering, primate-like shaped head and massive fur, a lighter area or hands held.
The valuable thing that Paul Freeman contributed to the field really came from his casts of footprints, and they have been examined by experts. He was able to capture what are called dermal ridges in his casts. This is an indication of striations in the skin.
Can't see much up through here. I hear the brush popping and stuff. Oh, there he goes.
Held before it as to the encounter. Not a hoax, something still moved, an elusive presence, but witnessing it is everything. Leave it forgotten. After fleeting glimpses, the forest keeps its secret. Isn't whether Bigfoot exists. Anyone can face what's out and changed. Will my truth?
He was pale in color. You could tell that something had upset him and something had bothered him.
Oh, God.
It's the only time in my life, including the day that he died, that I ever saw my dad scared of anything. And that right there, to me, I mean, I don't have to see one. That's the only proof I'll ever need for the existence of this animal, just knowing my dad and how that affected him.
People can be skeptical, but you cannot deny the impact that these sightings have had on the people who saw the activity.
I mean, what can you say? You know, your dad comes home and he's got something like this on video, and you watch it and you rewatch it and then you watch it again and you say, well, that's not a bear. You know, it's not a man. It's nothing I've ever seen. And yeah, I mean, it was exciting. It was an exciting time.
Oh, there he goes.
This is probably the most dynamic Bigfoot footage that I've ever seen.
The movements of this creature look very natural.
Doesn't look like a man in a suit. The height looks right, the weight looks right. I feel like this would be difficult for a man to hoax all on his own and the word not get out.
Oh, God. Hear my heart beating 40 miles an hour.
I believe that he saw Bigfoot. I know my dad. I grew up with my dad. I know what kind of person he is. Frightened my dad, who I saw as being Superman, basically. You know, growing up, big guy, tough guy, brave guy, someone who wasn't afraid of any man or beast, you know, on this earth, to actually be rattled and scared by something. I don't need any more proof than that.
Gotta be tracks here somewhere in this road. Oh, here's one.
For somebody to devote their whole life to a field like Bigfoot, searching and squatching, to finally get something on camera is a huge deal.
Yeah, they've been all over this in here.
The Cabin in the Woods channel delves into the most remote and haunting locations, uncovering stories that linger long after the cameras stop rolling. In August 2013, a couple vacationing on Vancouver Island took a secluded back road leading toward the tiny village of Port Renfrew. Surrounded on both sides by thick forest and with barely a sign of civilization, the narrow road seemed to disappear into the wilderness. During their drive, they paused by a quiet roadside creek, a seemingly ordinary moment that would soon unfold into an encounter far from ordinary, a tale the channel would later bring vividly to light.
So as I said, in August 2013, this couple was on vacation on Vancouver Island. They were driving this rather obscure back road toward a tiny hamlet called Port Renfrew. During our trip, my wife and daughter and I drove this same road, and we also visited Port Renfrew. And I can tell you that this particular road is small and narrow and lined with dense forest on either side, and really not much else. Zero signs of civilization.
The couple, no strangers to wandering deep into the wilderness, decided to follow a nearly dry creek bed, hoping it would guide them safely through the dense forest. Barely a couple hundred feet in, the sudden sound of snapping branches ahead made them pause. Through the shadows, a towering figure appeared, upright, swaying slightly, with a cone-shaped head and broad, imposing shoulders. It was a presence unlike anything they had encountered, leaving them frozen between awe and fear as they tried to comprehend what they were seeing.
They had walked only about 200 feet into the tree line along this creek bed when they suddenly heard branches breaking up ahead. They looked 75 to 100 feet further into the forest in the direction they were going, and that's when they saw this large, upright figure. The figure was standing bipedally, they said, and swaying back and forth. The couple said it looked like it had a cone-shaped head and broad, bulky shoulders.
The couple insisted that what they were seeing couldn't be a bear. Wendy, walking slightly ahead, suddenly stopped and gestured back to her partner, drawing his gaze toward a shape 75 to 100 feet away. At first glance, they thought it might be an animal, but its stance was unmistakably upright, moving on two legs. Even from that distance, its head had an unusual, almost conical shape, an appearance that left the couple uneasy, realizing they were witnessing something entirely out of the ordinary.
They stressed that in their opinion, this was not a bear.
Wendy was ahead of me, and she turns around and she points, and I looked up into the distance. Way in the distance, it was about 75 to 100 feet ahead of us. You could see something in the distance. At first we thought it was a bear, but it seemed more bipedal. So it seemed more upright. It appeared to have kind of a conish.
The couple could just make out the shape of its head, tapered and sloping, with a broad, almost flat forehead that suggested a surprising intelligence. Its back looked thick and powerful, and one massive shoulder jutted into view, the arm disappearing into the shadows of the forest. Every feature hinted at something extraordinary, a creature far beyond anything they had ever expected to encounter.
Examine and scrub back and forth through these areas, you can see that sloping, cone-shaped head and the rather flat, somewhat horizontal forehead, very reminiscent of gorilla cranium shapes. We've also got what looks like a thickly muscled back and what really strongly appears to be a shoulder with the upper portion of what would be the creature's right arm hanging down out of view.
The creature's face bore a striking resemblance to Patty from the Patterson-Gimlin film. Todd Gatewood's restoration, made solely from the original footage, revealed uncanny similarities in facial features, posture, and the way it seemed to glance back. The image carried a chilling sense, as if the forest had quietly replayed a moment from decades ago.
But that face strongly resembles the face of Patty, the subject of the famous Patterson-Gimlin film, particularly in this enhanced frame done by photo archivist Todd Gatewood. This is an undoctored frame, simply enhanced using the original visual information captured on Roger Patterson's camera. No AI was used in this restoration by Todd Gatewood. And look at the similarities, not just in facial features, but in overall shape, in impression, and in the fact that both Patty and the subject of this 2013 footage from Port Renfrew appear to be turning their full bodies.
There was a faint, musty odor in the air, subtle, but noticeable. At first, it might have been mistaken for a bear, but its size and shape quickly suggested otherwise. Even from a distance, it appeared massive, with broad shoulders that hinted at a strength far beyond any ordinary animal.
There was actually kind of a musty smell, wasn't there? Mm-hmm. It wasn't strong. I would say it was kind of subtle. I don't know if bears stink. I mean, somebody says, oh, it was a black bear. I don't think it was a black bear. I've seen black bears before.
No, it wasn't black.
It didn't. It seemed quite big. And she's looking through the camera and zooming in on this thing. I'm seeing it from a distance. But it appeared to be quite big, and it seemed to have shoulders on it. That's what it looked like to me.
The identity of the figure remained a complete mystery. Reactions to the footage were split. Some dismissed it outright, while others were captivated. The discussion it sparked only deepened the intrigue, leaving viewers debating what had truly been captured. Although they emerged from the forest unharmed, the question of what they saw remains unanswered. Was it merely an unusual animal, or something far more extraordinary watching from the shadows? On Salish Sasquatch, the unexplained comes alive. In 2013, Jonathan and Ben Brown captured a heat signature on their property, far larger than any known animal. Years later, this footage remains one of the most compelling pieces of Bigfoot evidence, a chilling reminder that something watches from just beyond the edge of the familiar.
In 2013, brothers Jonathan and Ben Brown recorded a Sasquatch on their property with a thermal camera. This is a recall of that event.
The brothers sat in silence, farm sounds all around. Then, a soft, deliberate tapping from behind. Jonathan lifted the thermal camera. Among the cattle, a shape appeared, low, with a human-shaped head, moving unlike any animal. It watched them. For the first time that night, the weight of being observed was unmistakable.
Anyhow, Ben and I are sitting out here, my brother Ben and I, and we're thinking like, man, it's so loud out right now. But then there was one point where we heard this light tapping, and it was coming directly behind us. And that was when I got out the thermal camera and was looking around, and yes, there was plenty of cows around, but there was something with a human-shaped head that was laying close to the ground. And I was looking at it, and I was like, Ben, there's something on here that...
The figure lingered, unseen but present. Jonathan realized he wasn't recording. Panic surged. He handed the camera to Ben. Finally, the device captured the presence that had been silently watching all along.
At that point, I'm thinking that I'm recording, then I realized that I'm not recording. And I go, hey Ben, it's not recording. I was taking snapshots at the time. And so I hand the thermal camera over to Ben, and then that's when Ben gets it recording.
What should have been an ordinary night became extraordinary. Jonathan handed the camera to Ben just as a massive figure appeared. Broad shoulders, human-shaped head. Among the grazing cattle, it moved differently. Something far beyond explanation.
John just decided he wanted to look through the thermal. I wasn't expecting anything, but suddenly he's like, hey, I got something here, and it's just right over there. So he was looking at it for a while. He handed it to me. I pushed record. And yeah, you saw in that video, the shoulders and the head. For the first little bit, I was just trying to figure out how this is a cow, because there were still cows walking right here. You could see that in the video too. So my mind was telling me this isn't what I'm looking at.
A cow wandered by, closer than the figure, calm and unbothered. Yet the presence beside it felt different, familiar to the animal, alien to the humans, deepening the mystery. After carefully reviewing the footage and considering every possibility, all signs pointed to one startling reality. Something was watching them. A silent, deliberate presence, unseen yet fully aware of every move they made.
After all of my analysis, I've never been able to come up with any alternative explanation other than that it's a Sasquatch observing John and Ben as they're filming it.
As the cow moved past, Jonathan analyzed the figure. Nothing matched. Cows, bears, any known animal. Features were missing. What remained defied explanation. Something neither fully human nor animal.
In fact, partway through the video, we see a cow wandering past. In attempting to make some kind of comparison, I used many silhouettes of cows in different degrees of poses to resolve the question. I was unable to make any match at all. A real concern was with the ears. A cow's ears will show up on thermal very easily, and they seem to be absent from what we could only surmise as the head area of the subject. Using a bear for comparison wasn't any better, but that doesn't exclude the possibility of it being a person.
On the ridge where the figure appeared, they found a massive 16-inch footprint, larger than anything else on the property. Its curve suggested it adapted to the slope. Frame by frame, Jonathan studied the footage, each image deepening the mystery of what had left its mark.
We've also filled in part of the ridge where he was standing. But if you notice that this is a very steep hill and he was standing right here.
The print cast on site measures 16 inches. We have found other prints in the same size on our property, but they lack the unique bend that this print has. I believe the bend is due to the steep hill that the Sasquatch was standing on.
Jonathan whistled, and the creature locked its gaze on the camera. Thermal images revealed a crest along the skull, glowing eyes, and a towering, muscular frame. Even bone structures were visible beneath its mass. The team closed with eerie audio, the sounds of the unknown lingering long after.
I came across the moment that Jonathan whistles and the Sasquatch looks directly at the camera. Note the sagittal crest on his skull, a trait not shared by humans. The eyes, which glow hottest through a thermal, are obvious, as well as the massive pectorals, deltoids, and trapezius muscles. The clavicle bone on the Sasquatch is also clearly visible. We leave you with an audio clip from our property. Thank you for watching.
After the tapping, heat signature, massive footprints, and piercing gaze, one question remains. What watches from the shadows, unseen but fully aware, just beyond the edge of the familiar?
Calls and other noises could be heard sometimes nightly, and it was a series of knocks that caused John and Ben to grab the thermal camera and record that night.
The following clip is by YouTube user Bigfoot Tony. Many question why the Sasquatch in the video doesn't move. Tony has stabilized the video to show otherwise. His entire video is also linked in the description.
To him, it looked like something far more disturbing, a second watcher hidden in the dark. And still, the forest keeps its silence. These 6 encounters are only pieces of a much larger puzzle, one that grows stranger the deeper we go. Don't go far. What's waiting next on Scary Encounter will make you question everything you thought you knew.